Hello, good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar. Today, we're going to be looking at clearing records, part of a series, in particular focusing on clearing and deleting your stock records. So as I mentioned, this is part of a series. So there are other sessions which are covering clearing other records, including the audit trail, customer and supplier records, and nominal records, and also another one on clearing invoices and orders. So we won't be covering those today, but we do have sessions on those, and I will give you a little bit more information on them further through today's session. So if you are looking for that, you can join us on those sessions as well. Before we begin though, just as normal, a little bit of housekeeping just in case this is your first session with us. So first of all, you may notice that you're placed on mute, so you will see a red icon with the microphone in and the line through it. It just means that you are placed on mute. It means you can't speak to the team directly, but you can ask your questions through the questions panel. So you can use that icon that looks like a speech bubble with the question mark in, and it will open up the panel for you to submit your questions across to the team today. And even if that's just a link to a future session, please do just pop your questions in there throughout, because we do have Abby and Michael on hand throughout today's session for your questions. So don't feel you've got to wait till the end to submit any questions either. There is also a handout for today. Now we are going to be really heavy on the demonstration today, because that really is what brings it to life for you to see it in action in a real data set. So there's not too much on the handout, it's just a copy of a few of the slides, but if you want to take a copy, by all means you can do. The icon that looks like a document with the folded corner is the option for downloading that handout today as well. And that is only available during the session today, so please do take a moment just to download that. Okay, so what we're going to go through today is why clear out my records. We just want to clarify a little bit on there. There's no pressure on taking out your records, so we just want to go through that. Creating a company archive, it's a really important step, and we're just going to go through those steps again. So if you have been on a previous session, sorry to repeat ourselves, but we do just want to make it clear what options you have there. And then we'll go through clearing, deleting stock routines. I'll then give you another option. If you can't clear or delete stock for various reasons, there is an alternative with inactive records. And then we'll just talk about some of the other clear out routines and the webinars that are coming up. And then we will finalise with any final questions that you may have. Just before we begin, I've just gone right to the end, apologies. Just before I begin, I do just want to do a really quick poll, just to see if you have attended any of our webinars on Clear Audit Trail. So I'm just going to open the poll there. Now, we did do one this morning if you joined us. If not, it might have been a previous Clear Audit Trail session. Just want to know if you have actually joined us on that session previously. So I'm just going to wait for a few answers to come through there. I do like to try and get 70% or so of you voting, just so that we can get a good idea of the overall group. And there is a slight delay as well, so it does take a moment or two for this to come across, which is no problem. Perfect. Well, that's us very near the 70% there. That's excellent. So I'm just going to close it there. Don't worry if you haven't managed to respond. I've got a really good idea there of what we're looking at. So just to quickly pop the results on there, if I can reshare them. So the majority of you haven't attended Clear Audit Trail. That's no problem. Today's session doesn't rely on a Clear Audit Trail being run. But if you are wanting to remove transactions from your transaction window, or remove any other record like your customers and suppliers, they do rely on a Clear Audit Trail. So if you are considering joining one of those sessions, you might want to catch up on the Clear Audit Trail recording, which is available on our website. If you want access to that, pop something in the chat. We can get you a link directly to the recording of that, so you can watch that in preparation for the next session there. So do just pop something into the chat. So thank you very much everyone for your participation there in the poll. Like I say, today does not rely on a Clear Audit Trail being run. So first of all, we're just going to talk very briefly about why would you want to clear your records. Okay, you might be feeling pressure from elsewhere. It may be higher up in your business. It might be that your accountant or your IT are telling you you need to clear records. But for us, from a Sage perspective, it is an optional task. So it is something that's entirely up to you. It's not something that we say you must do, after a year end. We say it's something you might want to do after a year end. So there's certainly no pressure from our end to do so. It just means that the data you're using, though, if you do clear out your older data, is the most up-to-date data. So it means that you can access everything that's up to date as of today, rather than sort of scrolling through much older data that may be null and void as of today. You can also make your searches and filters within the software work more effectively. If they're only searching through live data or up-to-date records, it means that they will work more effectively for you. And it also means that general processing could potentially be a bit speedier. If you're not having to, like I say, scroll and search through lots of inactive records, it can mean that processing's a little bit quicker. What I do also always like to do is just put a little caveat on there to say that it won't always resolve your speed issues. If you're having speed issues in the software, quite often it's caused by external factors. So it could be environmental factors, could be network issues, antivirus. So I would never say clear it out and your life will be much quicker. I'll say it could make your data more effectively, but there could be other outside impacts on there as well. Okay, so I am just going to very quickly recap Clear Audit Trail. There's a few people interested on that webinar, and that's great. There's a whole session dedicated to it, but I do just like to quickly recap what we mean by that Clear Audit Trail and sort of why it's important to some of the other routines. So a Clear Audit Trail removes transactions from your software, and it removes transactions from the transactions screen. So that big long list of transactions, all the transactions you've ever posted, can be removed using a Clear Audit Trail. But they need to meet certain criteria to be removed. So they need to be on the dated on or before the date that you specify. They need to be a fully paid off transaction. So if it's an invoice, it can't be outstanding. And it needs to be bank and VAT reconciled if applicable to that transaction. Now they're the main ones. There are other ones as well, including gift aid, etc. And Michael has gone through that on his dedicated webinar, but I just wanted to give you a quick overview because clearing stock is very similar. It has criteria that must be met before we can clear the stock records. Okay, and the Clear Audit Trail removes transactions not just from the transaction window, but from your customer and supplier activity windows, which means that customers and suppliers can then be deleted as well, which is what lots of people are trying to do at the moment, is clear out some of those older customers, suppliers that they're no longer dealing with. Now, Clear stock is slightly different. It's not linked at all to the Clear Audit Trail. So even if you haven't done a Clear Audit Trail, you can still do a Clear stock. So they're completely separate from one another. So we're not reliant on that Clear Audit Trail being run. We can run the Clear stock at any point in time we wish to do so. However, before you carry out any of the routines in this series, removing data, we always recommend to run an archive of your data. Now, archive is a topic that causes a lot of confusion. Lots of people think that when we're referring to archiving the data, we're removing data. Now, archiving data is in fact, it's creating a duplicate set of data for you essentially. And this duplicate set of data, it's like a snapshot of your data here and now. So if I was to take an archive right now, it would take a snapshot of my data now. And it means that I've got a separate data set to look into if I wanted to look back at that historic data that I've removed, but it means it's no longer in my live data. So I'm now going to move on to a demonstration to show how to take an archive before we do the clearing stock routines, because they're really important for some of your reports, etc. So bear with me 1 second, I'll just switch screens. Okay, so this is us in my data set here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just show you how to take that archive of the data. So an archive can be run as part of your year-end process. So it might be that you've just run year-end and you've already taken an archive. It could be that you're 6 months into your financial year, you're nowhere near doing a year-end and you really want an archive here and now at this point in time before we clear out that older data. So what that is possible, we don't need to run year end to do so. We've got the option within Tools, Period End, and in here we've got the option to Archive Company. And typically it's just moved that onto the other window, so just bring that across. So in here, as you can see, because I'm not running it as part of my year end, it's called it mid-year 2021. That's just because my data set's a little bit older. So I'm just going to change it to 2023 so we can find that nice and easy. And it's going to create an archive folder for me, which is normally held alongside my main data set. So I'm just going to say OK. And what it's going to do is take that snapshot of my data here and now at this point for reporting purposes. Now yours might take longer than mine because mine is a tiny data set, so bear in mind that when you're coming to do this. But what that means is now, if somebody said to me in 10 minutes time, once I've cleared my stock and deleted all my old records, that I need a report, I need a product valuation report from 3 years ago, then I can use my archive to do that rather than my live data. So I'll just show you how you can access an archive and then we'll get on with the task in hand. We can go into File and Open and then Company Archive. And again, it's just giving me a window on the other screen, apologies. And here it's got any previous archives that I've taken. So you can see an old one that I took in 2020 when I did my year end. And we've got a mid-year one here. So you can just open this and pop the password in that was applied at the time of taking the archive. And there we are in my archive. Now what you'll see here is it looks just like my normal data set. So everything that was in there at that point in time, all of my customers, all of my stock records are still there. So even if I run a clear stock on my live data set, my day-to-day data set, I still have this archive for reporting purposes. And it means that I don't have to restore a backup over my live data. So it means it's another set of data alongside for reporting purposes. Nothing has been removed as a result of me archiving. So the option for the archive, just because we've got a quick question there, was Tools, Period End, and it was Archive Company. And like I say, it's a read-only data set. So I'm just going to go back into the live data, File and Open, and then back to my company data. And it means I could just go back to my live data and carry on with my day-to-day processing there. So it's a really key step. And lots of people ask, can I not just use a backup? A backup is also a great option, but bear in mind with a backup, you need to restore it into somewhere. And if the only location you've got is your live data, it's a bit riskier than taking an archive, which just sits in the background alongside your data set, and then there's no backing up and restoring involved. So it is still advisable to take the backup, but definitely take the archive as well. Okay, so we're going to move on with the task in hand. Sorry, a quick question there. How did I go back? So to come out of the archive, just go to File, Open, and then Company Data, and it just took me back into my live company data. So File Open, I can go into Company Archive, and then I can come back to the company data as well. Now we are looking to run a session purely on the archive at the beginning of March, because we do get a lot of questions on that. And what we'll try and do in that session is weigh up the benefits of backups and archives. So if you still have a few questions on that, please do ask, but we are going to do a session just to really try and clarify those. Okay, so I'm in my live data now. We know we've got an archive. We now want to do a clear stock on some of our older product records because they're no longer in use. They're null and void, and to be honest, they're just really making my product list look untidy. So I'm going to go into my products and services, and in here you can see my current products. Okay, so I don't have a huge amount. You're probably in a situation where you've got probably hundreds, if not thousands of records in here. And you might have some that over the years you've changed to things like do not use, like I have here. You might have some that have got names like do not use or not in use. And this is an opportunity to try and clear some of those up. Now, just to give you an idea, first of all, I'm just going to look at my list and go into alphabetical order. I'm going to now just look at the quantity in stock. Okay, and order it that way. Because in order to remove an item through clear stock, it needs to have nothing left in stock. Okay. There are other criteria as well, which I'll go through in just a moment for you once I've gone through the process itself. Okay. So to delete stock, first of all, what we need to do is make sure there's no activity remaining on them records. So if we have a look at this one here first, I'm not going to try and pronounce it, but if we go into the activity, although we've got nothing in stock, we still have transaction history, which means it won't let us delete it just yet. So we need to do a step prior to deleting to allow us to delete. So the two steps that we're going to run through are held together. Now again, they were within tools and then period end. And all of your sort of your clear up options are mostly in here. I'm going to go into clear stock first. This is our first step. Again, sorry, it just opened on the other window. Okay, so clear stock and delete stock are held in the same window together. So the clear stock will remove activity from our product records, okay? But there are criteria for it to remove. So I need to specify a date, first of all, that I want to clear stock up to, okay? Now, in this instance, it's picked the end of 2022, and I'm going to stick with that. But that is entirely up to you where you want to clear your stock up to. They can't be linked to a project record, and they also need to have the same quantity in as the quantity out, okay, which basically means that there shouldn't be anything left in stock. So in equals out means there shouldn't be anything left in stock. Also, if they're linked to things like bill of materials, it also won't clear them. So you would need to start looking through bills of materials and removing items from there if you're using that. Now, the key thing to point out here is that it can impact some of your reports if you run these on stock records that are required for valuation reports. And it does mention it here. You can see here, note. So if you use your retrospective product valuation report, we don't recommend to run the clear stock on records that you require for that. Okay, so with that in mind, clear stock gives us the options. We can run it across all records, or we can pick which records we want to run it across. Okay, so if we select all records, it means that we'll clear stock across everything. And if you ever want to do a product valuation report, even in the future, it means that they may no longer work for you. So really do consider if retrospective product valuation reports is something you might want to use down the line if you're going to clear stock on all records. The other option we've got is to select records. Okay, so we can pick which records we want to run this for. Now, we never used to have this option, so this is a much better option now because we can really pinpoint which ones we want to run the clear stock across. So I'm going to select this one so I can show you how to pinpoint it. So by clicking here, we've got the option for new selection. And again, it typically opens on the other window, so just bring that across. And here what we could do is we could do it across all of them if we wanted to. But what I'm going to do today is I'm really just going to focus on those with a zero balance. So I'm just going to highlight those with my zero balances because really I know anything that's got anything in stock isn't going to be able to clear down. Now there's one I'm just going to not select just so I can use that in my demonstration a little bit later on. But as you can see there, everything with a quantity in stock of 0, I've currently highlighted to run this clear stock function across. I'm going to click on OK, and what it should do, just waiting for it to do, oh, sorry, I haven't clicked on clear stock yet. What it will do when I click on clear stock is it will prompt me into a backup. Okay, so I'm happy with my date, I'm happy with my selection, I'm running this across 8 records, and I'm going to click on clear stock, and it's prompted me to do a backup. Okay, so again, what we're about to do is irreversible. So if it's irreversible, it always forces us into the backup. So I can't even get past this one. It's going to force me. So I'll just run through that backup very quickly. Just take a moment or two. And that's my backup complete on the other window there. And again, it's run through the clear stock very quickly because I only had 8 records selected. So I can click on OK there. So we close out of the window and pop back into my products and services. Can't see any different from this window just yet, but if we go back in, what we should see is if it's met the criteria, it's removed the activity. So as you can see here, on that one I showed you earlier, which again I won't pronounce, it has now got no activity on there. So we're in a much better position for deleting the records. So that's the clear stock element of it, clearing off the transaction history to put it in a better position for deletion. So the next step would be to go ahead with the deletion step. So again, it's in Tools, Period End, and Delete Stock. It opens up the same wizard as it did before, but we're onto the second tab of the wizard now. Apologies that everything keeps going on the other window. It's what happens when you go back and forward between working in the office and working from home. So I can go back into clear stock or I can go into delete stock. And what this will do now is it does a scan of all my records that it can potentially remove from the software. So it scans them for me. So clicking start scan is just going to do a scan. It's not going to upset anything. It's not going to delete anything, but it is still going to force me into a backup because the step after that is a reversible again. So again, I'll just run through the forced backup, which is just running through on the other page. So this is all to protect you and to protect your data. So they're good steps really. And it's just done a really quick scan of my data. So apologies again for the other window. So it's scanned through all my records and it's found a number of items that can delete because they meet the criteria for deletion. So I can quickly check these, and if I'm happy that they're the ones I want to delete, then I can select which ones I want to delete. Or if I want to, sorry, I'll just clear that. If I wanted it to be all of them, I can click swap. And I do want it to be all of them apart from one, just so I can demonstrate the next feature for you. So I'm just going to leave that one there. And because they've got nothing on them, I can click on delete, and it's just going to say I'm going to permanently delete. Do I want to continue? Yes, we do. So if we have a quick look back at our products and services now, if we look through our list, as you can see there, quantity in stock, we've only got 2 left. Okay, so we previously had about 8, we've only got 2 left. 1 because I deselected it because I wanted that for the next one I'm going to demonstrate. This particular one, I just want to show you why this one's not been deleted. Is that it's part of a bill of materials. So it hasn't removed it because it's involved in a bill of materials. We can't just delete it. It would need to be removed from this bill of materials first. So that's why that one's still there, despite it having nothing in stock. It's part of the bill of materials there. So just a quick question on the steps there. I'll just go back through them. So tools, period end, delete stock. And then it will scan for you first, which will force the backup, which is just going ahead on the other window. And then once it's done that scan, it then gives you the list of the ones that could be deleted if you wanted to. And you can select from the list there. Now, obviously, I don't have anything left to delete, but I could select from this point. So even though it's scanned them and said they're clear to go, you can still sort of salvage them at that point. Okay, so that's the clearing stock and the deleting stock, and showing you some of the reasons why they may potentially not be able to be removed from the software. Now, there are some scenarios when you can't remove an item. For example, they're attached to a bill of materials. You're not quite sure what to do with that just yet. So there are alternatives that you can use to remove or hide from your main list, and sometimes from some of your reports as well. So that was one of the reasons I left my Shiraz on here, was just so that I could show you this particular feature. And I want to show you that on the mixed reds as well. And that's the inactive feature. So if you do have any left, that you don't really want to the main list, then we can mark them as inactive records. So I'm just going to pop into Shiraz first. Now again, to mark an item as inactive, again, there are certain criteria. Now in the handout is a link to the article, which just shows you what criteria need to meet before it can be marked as inactive. But some of the main ones are it can't have a balance. So if this if this record had a balance in stock, I wouldn't be able to mark it as inactive. If it had history on it or activity, we could still mark it as inactive as long as it was 0 in stock. So I'm just going to click on inactive, this little button here, and save. Easy done. As you can see there in the inactive column, we have the Y to indicate it's inactive. What we also have is the option up here is to include or not include inactive. So if we untick this box, it very quickly hides our inactive records, but they're easy to bring back. You can tick the box again, and there they are in the inactive column there. Just want to demonstrate this one. So my one that's part of a bill of materials, but tick the box there. Now, if I tick the box on that one, bring that across. Again, it can't be placed as inactive because it's part of a bill of materials again. So it's linking to other active records. So we can't mark this one as inactive because of it being part of the bill of materials. Our option there would be to remove the bill of materials from the item, save the record, and we could mark as inactive from there. So that's one of your criteria. Okay, so that brings us towards the end of the demonstration. I'm just going to pop back to the slides for one moment. Just want to very quickly talk about another step that you might want to do after deleting items from your data. Okay, so if you're deleting records, what that will do is it will remove files from your data, but what it doesn't do is retrieve any disk space. So I always remember someone explaining to me it was like books on a bookshelf. You can take the books off the bookshelf, but really you're not gaining any space back until you compress them or you push them together. So it's essentially compression of your data is doing something similar to that. It's the analogy that I like to use. So what you can do in File and then Maintenance, there is an option for data compression. Now, when you run a data compression, I'll show you this in just a moment just to demonstrate this. What we do recommend is you only run it on the area of the software that you've actually removed data from. It is something that we do recommend to take a backup of your data and also check of your data prior to running a compression of your data. I'll quickly demonstrate it because it is easier to sort of show you in live data. Just pop back into the data set there. So if I was to compress my data, it's in File and then Maintenance. And there are articles that guide you through this as well. So if you are interested, you can type in compress data. It will bring up an article for this. So we're going to compress. Apologies again, everything seems to be going onto the other window. I would make sure I've got a backup since clearing my records. And then I'd untick the box to compress all files. And because today we've only focused on products, I would just run the compression across the products record. And like I say, that's just going to condense the data down and retrieve that additional disk space for you. So always advisable if you're running a deletion across a particular module to just run that compression shortly afterwards. Okay, just pop back onto the PowerPoint there. Okay, so I'm just going to run through a quick summary there. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier on, clearing records is an optional task. Okay, so you're not under any obligation from us to do so. It just might be something that ties in nicely to your year-end process or something that you want to do on a sort of semi-regular basis. Clearing all of the data out could make it a little bit more efficient for you, particularly if you're using things like filters and searches. Regardless of what module you're removing data from, we always recommend to take an archive and also to take an error-free backup of your data as well. Regardless of what you're clearing, again, it will only clear it if it meets certain criteria. And if you can't remove an item, we do still have the option to mark it as inactive and then hide the inactive records from the main windows. And the final step there is that compression. Compressing the data allows you to reclaim that disk space that's been freed up through deleting the records there. Okay, so time for your questions. So please do get your questions across. I think the team have kept on top of them so far, but please do get any final questions sent across to the team. We'll get them answered for you. I just want to talk about the upcoming webinars. I have mentioned that we've got a few coming up there. Tomorrow afternoon, we're going to be looking at clearing customers, suppliers, and nominal codes. We're running that same session on Tuesday next week as well. Due to demand, we've had a lot of people register. We just want to give people options of different times and dates as well. So if you're interested in joining one of those sessions, then there will be a link in your follow-up email today. And then next week, we've had a few questions on this. We'll be going through clearing invoices, orders, and quotations as well. So slightly different to the process we've seen today. Slightly easier process, but again, we'll walk you through it just to give you the confidence so that you can do those steps yourself there. And then also next week, we do have something that's a bit different. We do have a session on making tax digital. Some new penalties came into place at the beginning of January. So we're going to talk through those new penalties so you're aware of what's coming. And also we're going to have a member of our compliance team on hand for answering any questions as well. So if you are registered for Making Tax Digital for VAT, next Wednesday at 11 o'clock is probably a really good session for you to join in, just to get a little bit more understanding around the legislation. So it's not product based, this is purely on the legislation. Quick chat about some of the tools that you've got access to as part of your membership. So as a Sage customer, you are a member of our Sage community, and it means that you have access to lots of help and support online, in particular your Sage membership. So member benefits include member masterclasses, where we have lots of experts in the field who have provided us with blogs and video content, which is not product specific. It's more around the challenges that your business is facing from day to day. We've got access to learning on Sage University, and we've also got our community forums through Sage City. So if you're interested on any of those, then you can join us on the link that's on the screen there, and it gives you links into each of those areas as well. Just a little bit more information there on the Member Masterclass. We are in season 2, and that's all about unlocking the power of productivity in your business. Season 3 is coming soon, so watch this space for more information on season 3. Finally, one last thing to mention there, just before we wrap up there, is our new version 29, is coming soon. And we do have sessions running on the new features in version 29. So again, in the follow-up email today, you'll have a link to our webinars page. If you want to see what's coming in the new software, which is due for release at the end of this month, get ahead of the game, then you can register for those sessions and we'll take you through some of the new features that are coming soon for you. Okay, so I think we're almost on top of the questions. I'll just pop out a final call for any questions there and to see if there's anything we can demonstrate at all. I'll put myself on mute for 2 moments, but if you are leaving us, thank you very much for joining us, and we really do hope to see you on one of our future sessions. Like I say, we've got lots of interesting sessions coming up over the next few weeks, but I'll put myself on mute in the meantime just to see if we can finalise any questions there. Okay, so that's us almost at an end. There has just been a final question come through, which I will pick up on. And it's, would archiving data have an increase in the speed of using the software? So remember, archiving isn't removing any data. Archiving is creating that read-only set of data that sits alongside your data set. So it won't have any impact on the speed of your software. Removing data by potentially deleting stock, clearing the stock records out might help to speed up if that's the cause of the speed issue in the first place. So like I say, I do always put that caveat out there is, deleting any record in your software will speed up the data if that's what's causing the speed problem in the first place. There can be lots of environmental factors as well. So don't always rely on clearing data down to make it quicker, because there could be external factors as well. Okay, so I think that's us all answered there. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us again. It's been a pleasure to have you all with us. And again, we hope to see you on another session really soon. So take a look at all of the interesting topics we've got coming out on the email that's going to follow up today. Thanks very much there. Okay, thanks. Goodbye.